Well, good evening and thank you for joining me. I'm meteorologist Jake Lambright. We have a lot to talk about when it comes to Mardi Gras Tuesday in the way of seeing some strong to severe storms. So I do want to go ahead and dive right in with a quick check of our severe weather outlook. Now, this will change overnight tonight and twice during the day tomorrow, once overnight and then once around midday tomorrow. And then it will also change on Tuesday. So full disclaimer, this will change, and I'll show you in a little bit where you can find that latest info as it changes. But as it stands right now, about 9 p.m. on Sunday evening, this is that severe weather outlook for Tuesday. Now, you'll notice across a lot of the state of Louisiana, including I-20 from Shreveport through Monroe, all the way to the Louisiana-Mississippi state line, even down into areas like Leesville, Fort Johnson, Alexandria, Marksville, and just north of Baton Rouge and Hammond, we have that level 3 out of 5 enhanced risk in place across a good chunk of the state. And then those that are not under an enhanced risk are under a slight risk, which is a level 2 out of 5 on the severity scale. Now, when it comes to the probability of seeing severe weather, that's what these categories are based off of. There's a 30% chance of seeing severe weather within 25 miles of a point in that enhanced risk area. And I do want you to pay special attention to this black hatched area here. This indicates that we could see significant wind gusts with these storms, or even the chance of a strong tornado or two, again, within this area with the black dashed lines. And based on what I've been saying with the past few model updates, it certainly is possible. I don't think we're going to see a severe weather outbreak per se, but I do expect severe storms within the state of Louisiana, and again, some of those could be on the more significant side. Let me walk you through here real quick what the latest HER model is showing, or one of our high resolution models going into Tuesday. So we'll go ahead and fast forward things just a little bit. It'll take just a second for that model to load in, but really the storms start off in Texas on Tuesday morning. Now, you might notice this timestamp right here, that 9Z, that is in UTC time, so I'll kind of convert that on the fly. This here, that 12Z, is about 6 a.m. You'll notice there those showers and storms in north central Texas, even back into eastern Oklahoma, with maybe some isolated shower activity out in portions of west Louisiana. But at that time, I don't expect that activity to be severe. But we fast forward things a few more hours. Things get a little messier in East Texas as we go towards about 10, 11 o'clock in the morning. But the environment just not quite as prime as it will be as we head into Tuesday afternoon. That's where we're going to have to watch things pretty closely. We have a little bit of energy in the air. I know I've had a lot of people ask me too, will the instability or lack of storm energy be a factor? And at this point, it very well could. And I'll actually show you that storm energy here in just a moment. But as we go towards the afternoon, this is about noon and beyond. That's when I think our highest severe weather threat is going to be across the state. And that's really going to extend basically down from I-20 south through central Louisiana and stay just north of the I-10 corridor, at least what the latest guidance is showing. And I will say this, when it comes to timing too, the past few updates here from the HRRR and another higher resolution model that I have access to have been pretty consistent with the timing. So the good news with this is that it's not looking like an overnight event, but this could have an impact on your plans on Tuesday. I know a lot of people are off for Mardi Gras. We've got the parades going on. And we have another impact before the storms even arrive that could certainly have an impact on those Mardi Gras plans. Let's talk a little bit about severe weather parameters. We'll actually look at our storm energy, and I'll kind of show you what I was talking about with that higher storm energy rolling in after noon on Tuesday and kind of sticking with us from about noon to 6 p.m. or so that afternoon and evening. So now that model's loaded in, let's go ahead and fast forward this timeline a little bit to about noon. And you'll notice these brighter colors here, especially in deep East Texas, starting to move into west central Louisiana. This is where we have a higher amount of storm energy. In fact, about 1,800 joules per kilogram of CAPE, as we call it, or convective available potential energy. It's kind of a scientific term that we use. But to make it simple, storm energy, that's going to be a little higher, in particular south of I-20. Go ahead and fast forward things just a little bit more mid-afternoon as we see that kind of line or that cluster of storms move off to the east. The storm energy is really the highest from Franklin Parish into LaSalle, Catahoula, Concordia, down through Rapides and Avoyelles. And then the highest of that storm energy really kind of caps off near Allen, Evangeline, and St. Landry Parish in Louisiana. Now, there's still some storm energy to the south of that, but it is a little bit lower. That storm energy moves out as the storm's that cold front moves through and takes all of the energy with it into Mississippi. There are a few key things that I want to look at here whenever it comes to the tornado potential in the environment. Is it really going to be favorable for tornadoes? And I'm not going to quite give a straightforward answer just yet, but I kind of want to show you a few of the things that I look at as a meteorologist behind the scenes when it comes to making that determination of, is this going to be a tornadic environment or an environment that is going to support tornadoes as the storms roll through. Going to take just a second there for that to load in, but we're going to take a look at bulk shear, or essentially the wind shear at the closest kilometer or so to us here at ground level. We're also going to take a look at something called storm relative helicity. That also something big to look at. We're going to look at our relative humidity, as well as something we call LCL heights. I won't get too far into that. That's a lot of scientific jargon, but a lot of this can tell us if the environment will be favorable for tornadic activity or not. Let's go back to about noon and a little bit beyond that. The wind shear in the lowest kilometer, especially here in Arkansas and even into northern Louisiana, is very, very impressive, more than conducive for tornadic activity. But as I showed a moment ago, the storm energy in that area just isn't as impressive. There's enough there for maybe a storm or two to become strong to severe. It's what we call more of a conditional risk for severe weather. We don't have a lot of energy, but the other ingredients there are favorable. The wind shear isn't as strong as you go towards central and southern Louisiana, but it's still more than favorable to support tornadoes. So that definitely has my attention. We need roughly 20 knots of shear or so in lowest kilometer, and you'll notice here, even at a lower amount, 30 knots of shear there near Alexandria, 35 to 40 near Gina, near Catahoula Parish as well. So in that regard, we have plenty of wind shear to support tornadoes. Let's also look at that storm relative helicity again, as close to us here at the ground as we can get. That will also help to paint a big picture, because just because one variable is favorable for tornadoes doesn't mean that we necessarily have an atmospheric environment that will support those tornadoes. Let's go again back into Tuesday afternoon. We'll start things off about noon or so. That is 6 a.m. Let me go forward a few more hours. Here's things about noon. And once again, storm relative helicity across southern Arkansas and northern Louisiana, very, very impressive. If we had more storm energy up that way, I would be a lot more concerned for my friends up in northeast Louisiana. But thankfully, like I said, there could still be severe storms up there, but the lack of energy is going to limit things, and things are going to struggle a little bit more. We're looking in this area for anywhere from 150 meters squared per second squared, what you see there on your screen, to 300 or greater than that. That will support a tornadic environment. And you'll see here across those areas, we'll start where the highest storm energy is over in LaSalle, Catahoula Parish. We're well into the 400s, well into the 300s in areas like Alexandria, Fort Johnson, and even down further to the south near Opelousas. We're still looking at well over that 300, 150 to 300 range that we're looking for in a tornadic environment. So once again, so far things are lining up where, yes, it does look like storms could produce tornadoes as they move through, especially central and southern Louisiana, but also, again, the parameters are there for a tornado or two across northern Louisiana as well. We'll go ahead and fast forward the LCL height, or basically the height that our cloud bases will be lowest to the ground across Louisiana, going back to about that noon time frame or so. We're looking for those heights to be below 1,000 meters, well below 1,000 meters across a lot of the state here. You'll notice there's really about 1 to 200. So again, really want those to be 1,000 or lower for an environment that is very favorable for producing tornadoes. Now, real quick, I do actually want to go back to the storm relative helicity. And I really want to look at things again in central Louisiana, because the southern part of the Arklamis region and the northern part of the central Louisiana region, I think, could see the best chance of severe weather on Tuesday in the state of Louisiana. Not to say that that threat is non-existent anywhere else. We certainly will more than likely see at least some severe activity in those areas. But once again, really want to kind of hone in on that area where I think the greatest chance for strong to severe storms is going to be. Right here, we'll take Alexandria as a reference point. Again, we're way over that 150 to 300 that we would want to see if we were wanting severe weather, which of course no one wants to see severe weather, especially on Mardi Gras Tuesday. But the one thing that I want to look at here, we're looking at that storm relative helicity, and I want to see if most of it is concentrated within that lowest layer that we're looking at. And sure enough, it is. And again, that is something that's a little bit more favorable for tornadic activity. I can't highlight that, unfortunately, but once again, not something that we generally want to see. Now, I do also want to talk about the chance for long track and significant tornadoes, because going back to that severe weather outlook, this black hatched area right here indicates areas where we could see some significant wind gust of, I believe, 75 plus miles per hour, or potentially a strong tornado or two anywhere within this black hatched region. So just because you're in it doesn't mean your location will see a strong tornado. It just means that within this area, we could see a few strong tornadoes. Maybe some of those are in Louisiana, some are in Mississippi. Maybe they don't develop till they're in Mississippi, or vice versa. So you're going to be watching that area pretty closely. A few things here I really want to look at, especially as we go into the afternoon. So kind of back things up to just after noon on Tuesday. And there are a few things that I want to look at here. So far, I'm looking at some of these parameters. They don't jump out, at least the first one I'm looking at here, as something that's capable of producing longer track tornadoes in the central Louisiana region. Looking at the bulk shear, though, in the lowest kilometer, we're looking at 45 knots. That's certainly conducive, and then the storm relative helicity also kind of matches up. When we look at the wind shear from here at the surface to about 8 kilometers up, or about right here. So if we're looking at things from the ground up, kind of a vertical profile of the atmosphere, once again, we have enough shear that would be conducive for some longer track tornadoes. Our flow a little bit aloft also kind of would support this as well. And then as far as the location from our surface low, not really liking that. So that we might have that in our favor as far as keeping those longer track tornadoes away. But again, certainly something I'm going to be watching very, very closely. So to kind of just sum things up here with all of the scientific things that I just went into here, we certainly have an environment that's going to support a few tornadoes on Tuesday. It's a little too hard to say exactly which storms are going to produce tornadoes, but that's why we have that severe weather risk in place, is because there is the chance. Another thing, too, I want to talk about is actually not even associated with these storms initially, but it is something that can kind of help paint the bigger picture as we go into Tuesday afternoon. This could also cause some problems for Mardi Gras parades, because I know in areas like North and Central Louisiana, we've got these storms rolling through between noon and 6 p.m. And then in Baton Rouge, if there are any parades going on during the overnight hours, or on the North Shore, New Orleans, that could really cause some issues when those storms start to roll through. But out ahead of those storms, we're going to be looking at some pretty gusty winds. There are already high wind watches in places for a lot of southern and central Louisiana, just because of how strong the winds are expected to be. I'm going to have to convert some of these real quick. But anyways, the wind speeds, like I said, and wind gusts especially, are going to be very strong as we go into Tuesday afternoon. So here's a look at sustained winds as well as the temperature. We'll go ahead, let's go to about, we'll go to 3 p.m. here. These wind barbs here indicating winds at about 15 knots or so, which would translate to about 15 to 20 miles per hour. And at times, these winds, sustained winds, could be up to 30 miles per hour. When we factor in wind gusts, though, which I'm not sure if I can bring up here on my screen, it looks like that might be a bit of an issue. I cannot pull these up on the screen, but when it comes to wind gusts, some wind gusts out ahead of these storms could be as high as 45 to 50 miles per hour. So very, very strong wind gusts are expected, again, ahead of these storms. So by Monday night at the latest, you'll want to bring in any loose outdoor furniture. I know I have some patio furniture myself. I need to bring in yard decorations, you name it. That stuff could blow away or blow into the neighbor's yard well before the storms ever arrive on Tuesday. So something I want to note there, those strong southerly winds really going to pack a punch and could even make travel difficult, as well as cause some isolated power outages across the region as well. I don't think I have my graphic here quite on hand. I'm going to take that off for just a moment while I work to pull that up. But as we go into Tuesday, I did want to show a graphic regarding our overall severe weather setup. Because, like I said, more than conducive for those strong to severe storms. It's something I'm watching very, very closely here. So I actually have that graphic pulled up. I'm going to put that on the screen now. And again, kind of go a little more in depth there with that severe weather setup. So looking here, Here's where we have that surface low. This is a look at things during the afternoon on Tuesday, and I'm going to try to break this down as simple as I can and explain kind of what's favorable here looking at this severe weather setup. So this severe weather outlook, I believe, was from yesterday. Not the most up to date, but still paints a very similar picture. We'll have that cold front moving through behind the storms. Out ahead of that, though, we have warmer air moving in, the strong southerly winds, like I said, and that subtropical jet, low-level jet as well, going to be bringing in very strong winds, bringing in warmer temperatures and a lot of moisture for us as well. Then a little higher in the atmosphere, the polar jet stream is going to be kind of coming off from New Mexico. We'll see those winds blowing from northwest to southeast, and you'll notice to the south around the base of that low, we're going to start to see those winds shift directions. Pretty typical. But we notice here that the subtropical jet and the polar jet streams intersect here within the warm sector, which is what we call the area once the warm front has moved through, but before the cold front has moved through. That's usually the area where severe weather is most likely. We see those jet streams intersecting there, which in other words does tell us that things are going to be pretty conducive for what we call supercell storms on Tuesday. These have the chance to produce some hail usually and also a heightened tornado risk. And like I kind of walked you through a moment ago, we certainly have the tornadic environment there. And even some of these parameters that I read off to you a moment ago to kind of check off the boxes of, okay, this looks good for tornadoes or this doesn't so much look good for tornadoes, also checked off a lot of boxes in this is favorable for those supercell storms versus this is not. So that large-scale weather pattern, that large-scale weather setup tells us that we can expect supercell storms on Tuesday. Some of those could be discrete or kind of little isolated cells out ahead of the main line. At some point, though, whether we see a solid line from the beginning or kind of a cluster maybe of supercell storms that eventually become a line, we are expecting kind of both modes, or I personally am expecting both modes, at least at some point during the day, as I kind of showed you there, based on the model of my choice that also kind of matches up with what I agree with. So a lot can be shown there from our severe weather setup. And again, that's what I'm expecting going into Tuesday. So what do you need to do to be weather aware going into Tuesday? Make sure you're getting your information from trusted sources. There are great teams of local meteorologists that cover each part of the state of Louisiana. Me and my team cover Central Louisiana with KALB. You can find our coverage over on their website, on their Facebook page, or over on my Facebook page as well, which I'll show you here in just a second. Whether you want to get that information from trusted sources like local TV stations or the National Weather Service, we're all here to give you the best information that we can without the hype. We're going to tell you how it is. We're going to tell you how to prepare and give you the best information that we can give you to help you make the decisions that you need to make to keep you, your family, your business, what have you, informed and as safe as possible. So now's the time to continue to monitor that forecast as we get a little closer to Tuesday. There's still going to be some changes to it, and definitely pay attention to the weather as we go into the day on Tuesday. One way you can do that, make sure to subscribe to me here on YouTube. I'm going to try to do this a little more often in my free time and go a little more in depth on the overall setups that we have for severe weather, or hopefully not anymore this year, but winter weather, and kind of explain what we're seeing. So if you like this, please let me know. Any feedback is welcome. This is only the second or third time I've done this, but again, you can get these types of updates by subscribing to me here on YouTube. If you want more consistent and regular updates, the place I'm most active is Facebook. It's a great way for me to post updates pretty quickly. I post all kinds of updates, and also if you want to see pictures of me and my dog, this is the place you can see those, is here over on Facebook. I also try to stay pretty active on Instagram as well. I'm trying to get a little bit better about posting some more short form videos that tell you what you need to know when it comes to the most impactful weather in a minute to a minute and a half, 3 minutes max. I don't try to keep you for too long, but again, you can find me over on Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube at Jake Lambright to get the latest weather information. Thank you for joining me this evening. Hopefully we won't have any more severe weather for a little while longer, but we are getting into prime severe weather season, and there are some signals showing we could have an active few weeks ahead. I'll continue to provide you with further updates around the clock as needed. Thank you for joining me, and don't forget to subscribe for future information.